Alright, I want to talk about anarchism. Now, let me begin. I'm a Marxist-Leninist, but I'm going to tell you guys a story. I'm not going to talk about like the difference between anarchism and Marxism or anything like that. This is I wanted to share my life story because I was an anarchist at one time. So I want to share like my introduction to politics and everything, and my time in like my local anarchist movement without giving away too much information, so that I can keep my uh, identity hidden. Um, but so essentially, I'll go on with my story. So I'm from a small town in the northeast of the U.S., and it was in early October of 2011. Occupy Wall Street was a really big thing, and I actually didn't know anything about it at the time. But I was downtown at like a local fall festival thing, and there were four kids down there who I knew, and they were walking around with a sign that said "Occupy Wall Street." And another guy had a sign who said it said like "Get big business out of politics." And so at the time I was only about 16 years old. I'd just been exposed to the idea of anarchy from punk music, and so I immediately jumped on board with them. And the five of us set up, a blanket, and we sat downtown talking to anyone we could. Uh, and we didn't know that much. But so then, fast forward a week or so, we kept going out there every day, and people started to come down to this area and join us. And we began to have a few people, who joined us from around the area who were very outspoken and very well spoken. And these people were sort of rallied around. The people who didn't know what they were talking about would look to these people to know what they should be talking about. You know what I mean? And a month or so in, we had a good like 50 people or more like lined up like all day, like in our small town, just protesting capitalism, police brutality, wars. And we had like anarchists, right libertarians, anarcho-primitivists, like fucking people from the Green Party, like just random shit. Eventually, we organized a decent little cell of like organizers and agitators. For our small little town, it's funny. Um, but we met up like once a week for general assemblies, and we engaged in a little bit of like public outreach and food donation, and we a lot of us were in bands, so we did do benefit shows and stuff like that. Um, and then we combined with another Occupy movement from the next state over, which isn't too far. And by that time, I was probably about 19. I think it was like 2014. I'm so bad with like remembering all this in the time. But the movement had moved, as I said, to like the next state over. And we began to occupy a parking lot. And this was in a city. And it blew up pretty quick. And at this point, I still hadn't read any theory. My ideology at the time was some sort of like left anarchist, uh, but I didn't really understand the economy or anything like that. Everything I knew was learned from practical experience. And so the occupation turned into a tent city, and homeless people from around the city began to come, and it was pretty cool. Some of these people absolutely relied on our little collective for food and housing. We helped buy some of them tents so that they could live there. And I had a part-time job at the time. Yeah, I had a part-time job, uh, and it was in a grocery store. I'm tripping over my words, but this was a great advantage to us because again, we were homeless. I had no bills. I was you know, all my money could just go to like living at this camp. Um, and the city was attempting to set up for construction in the lot. So this was a huge issue that we were there. And the city's police started to engage in a pretty vicious harassment campaign for what it was. Like they arrested a comrade for jaywalking. They would sit outside the camp. The mayor would come by yelling at us with like the police backing him, and they would follow us and watch us and try and like follow us to alleyways where we would go to the bathroom so that they could write us tickets or pick us up. And one of these events blew up. There was quite a loud verbal altercation, and you could tell the city was getting serious about wanting to evict all of us. It doesn't sound like a lot, but we had like around 6 to 8 big tents, around 30 to 40 people. Believe it or not, they were huge tents, and people would sleep out like just on the ground with a sleeping bag and stuff like that. And some people didn't even, really interact with us. They just came and went. Like, you know what I mean? People had jobs and stuff. But, so a week or so after the verbal altercation, the occupation there was only about 3 weeks, maybe a month old. It was like 8 a.m. I guess everybody woke up to bulldozers. I wasn't there at the time. I was at work. I worked that day, I believe, from 7 to 1 o'clock. But they had gotten evicted. Bulldozers and the police came and everything. So that chaos unraveled, and I missed all that. But because I was in the leader's circle of friends, I knew exactly where they would go. And I was able to meet with one of them downtown to figure my way to our new base of operations. But unfortunately, the saddest thing about this is there were people that were with us there for the last 3 weeks who did start to rely on it. And there was this one lady there who was trying to get her life back together. And she was a drug addict and was trying to get her children back. And she, I believe, was at a job interview herself that morning when we got evicted. So she must have come back to, the parking lot, and just the entire camp was gone. And so, and so were the people who had become her family within the last 3 weeks. And so, like I said, I was at work when the eviction happened, and a few blocks from the occupation site, I met up with a comrade who led me to the new base of operations, which was back in where I'm from. Not quite where I'm from, but in the same state. So it was back in the other state. And this kind of signaled a turning point for the group. So this new place is like a mile hike up a mountain, and one of the leaders of the group spent their teenage years digging out in the side of this mountain to like make this structure. And there was like, they used wood, and it was some anarcho-primitivist shit. It was really quite impressive. So we hiked, when by the time me and my comrade got there, who was showing me the way up, they had already had this shit set up. The structure was fully tarped. There were tents set up with the people who didn't get left behind. Mostly the politically affiliated people. There were a lot of homeless people who were getting into the politics, but most of them got stuck back in the city. But yeah, so they had a garbage bag shower and everything, a lookout post. And so from here, my ideology started to shift. I barely had one to begin with, you know what I mean? But all the right libertarians had been gone for a long time. All that was left was like 15, which feels high, maybe 20 at most, anarcho-communists, eco-anarchists, anarcho-primitivists, whatever people wanted to call themselves. And so I kind of became a weird fusion of, all of these people around me. And we lived like this for a couple of weeks. And, that was it. Like, we concluded that was it. That was our society, our freedom. A truly democratic, stateless society where each gave and each took. And we would still travel to protest in the city daily, and to dumpster dive to get food, and to spange or buy beer. Some comrades are trying to do like little petty jobs around the city, asking people if they could like take garbage out or something like that. But the inevitable happened. We didn't change anything in a meaningful way, and you know, the whole thing fell apart in like the time span of a week. Um, but so the whole, you know, this whole like little part of the project where we merged with this other group and occupied that lot, that was like, you know, mixed with this. It's about 2 months altogether. That's about it. And then within a week, it just all fell apart. So two comrades who were a couple both got mono. So they left. Another comrade got diagnosed with Lyme disease. They fell ill and they were gone. Another comrade's dog became ill, and it was a very, very, very awesome dog. So of course, we encouraged them to go. And in the end, it came down to me and three of the four people who started the thing in 2011, and an additional person who is now stranded and homeless. Um, and then we all ended up home. So in 2015, I began calling myself an anarcho-communist. And I hung out with this collective and still hadn't really read theory. Um, and I mean, I wasn't very productive in this time. Um, at this point, my idea of changing the world was, you know, to find freedom in my own ways. I spent, you know, quite a few months being homeless, doing nothing, just sleeping, you know, on the side of the road and stuff. That was fun. But some friends got me a job, and one day I was having a conversation at work, and this was in 2016, very early 2016, and this person was a part of the Occupy movement as well. But they had read the manifesto, so they were a little more on board. They actually kind of understood something, and I was explaining that I thought communism like was a good idea. I just didn't think it would work without anarchy. Um, and he asked me why, and I couldn't answer that. And so he told me, you know, you should read the manifesto. And so I got a little hyped like when he kind of told me about like what Marx talked about in it. And so and he mentioned like Lenin and stuff. And so I was like, man, all right, like I need to read, like I need to understand this stuff. And so I bought the Communist Manifesto on Amazon. And along with it, I bought Kropotkin and I think Bakunin and God and the State, Emma Goldman, a little Malatesta pamphlet. And at some point, I bought uh, the Selected Works of Lenin, which was the best like mistake. Because I mean, I at the time, like I put that book up on the shelf and I didn't touch it. Like that thing was intimidating to me. Um, and yeah, so like from 20 to 21, I just read like, um, you know, like Kropotkin and Malatesta and Goldman. But by late 2017, I had read like quite a bit of Marx, and I was starting to kind of, you know, think about like I was already on board with Cuba since like 2016. So I mean, like I was so confused. But yeah, between 20 to 21, I also joined the IWW for a period of time. But I didn't really like do much with them. Just one march on May Day in like 2017, um, which was focused on, I believe, immigrant workers' rights at the time. And but in 2017, I also joined a study group, um, which was a Marxist study group. We decided we were going to really read Marx. Because at the time, I was really onto like libertarian Marxism. I was like, this is the answer, you know, because I don't know why we clung on to anarchism. Um, uh, but me and the study group of 7 people from my small town began reading Marx, and we read Lenin, and we read Stalin, and we read Mao, and we read all sorts of great shit. And honestly, like, anarchism was history. Like, um, that was it. Like, it was done. I've been a Marxist-Leninist since, and uh, I've consistently studied and tried to, you know, apply Marxism practically in real life, in reality as much as I can. And I'm grateful every day that this person suggested I read the manifesto, because it completely changed my entire course. And I battled with anarchism that whole time. And then, like, I didn't like Stalin or anything like that. Like, are you kidding me? When I was reading Goldman and Kropotkin, I didn't like Lenin. But when I finally did read that Lenin book, which I said I had bought at the same time, I was very impressed, and I began to understand. Um, and yeah, that's my story about being an anarchist and becoming a Marxist-Leninist, and just kind of, I don't know, like, anarchist movements don't do much. Like, I mean, that's it. We got evicted and it fell apart. So, all right, well, probably a useless story. I don't know if anyone wanted to hear it, but hope you guys enjoyed.